Welcome to episode 229 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing writer-director Peter Skopiak, who just did a film called The Last Witness. We talked through how he was able to get this film produced, as well as how he was able to break into the business with a small indie film that he did with friends years ago. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 229. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. To pick that free guide up, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I am interviewing writer-director Peter Skopiak. Here is the interview. Welcome, Peter, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me.
Thank you so much for having me, and looking forward to it.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up, and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
I was born in London, and so I'm London, UK, born and bred, of Polish parents. Both my parents are Polish. And from a filmmaking point of view, absolutely no background in film at all in the family. So this all came from just a love of film. As I got older, I got more into the arts, and I think at a point where you start going to the cinema on your own to see films that you particularly want to see, I think then you get the bug, and it stops being a hobby and an entertainment, and it starts being something more serious. My break came when I got a job first at MTV Europe, which was my first sort of job in TV. That was based in London. And then from then, a contact, I got a job at what was then B-Sky B, which is now Sky TV, which is also based just outside of London. And that was a job on the movie channels, Sky Movies and the Movie Channel. And I became an intern. I went in as an intern. I became what they call an interstitial director. I was making little promos in between films, telling you what film is on at 8 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, at 12 o'clock, this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But the main thing was that I got together with three kind of like-minded friends that I met at Sky, and we started running around making short films, music videos, short documentaries, under the guise of Formation Productions. We called ourselves Formation Productions, and we ran around in our spare time making films and music videos and documentaries. And that's really where it came from. All this time, I've got to say, there was never a kind of a moment where, as a kid, I was thinking, oh my God, I want to be a film director or I want to make movies, because in my opinion, it wasn't possible. Mm-hmm. It was because I didn't know anybody in the business. I thought that's too much of a leap. That's never going to be something that's possible. So really, as I went along, I was making up as I went along. I made a short film, people liked it, I made another one and another one. In the end, I made 3. And I just kept going. The big moment was when I actually left Sky and made the decision to make my first feature film, to write, produce, edit, direct my first feature film. And this was the early 90s, when the likes of Robert Rodriguez in America were making their films. You know, Reservoir Dogs was coming out, and it was very much the movement in America of just go out and do it. And I kind of was part of that in the UK. And so having made my short films, I then decided to go the whole hog and just give it a go and see if I could make a full feature film. And that became my first feature film, which was something called Small Time Obsession. And really from then, that that got a UK release, a UK cinema release. And then I carried on. It was what was going to be the next film, what was going to be the next film. I wrote another 3 scripts, and Last Witness was one of those. Mm-hmm. Now, Small Time Obsession came out in the cinema in 2000. Last Witness is coming out now. So the main point is I didn't think it would take me that long to make my second film, but it has. And to be honest, it's probably better for it, because in that time I've been working in UK TV drama, and that became ultimately my ultimate film school, just doing the job and learning on the job, and just developing the craft from a writing point of view and also from a directing point of view, to get to the point that I was ready to take on something that was obviously a lot more personal and a lot more, which came with a lot more responsibility than my first film, because The Last Witness deals with just historical fact, not just sort of a story just off the page, off the blank page.
So I just want to dig into a couple things you said. I know a lot of people listen to this podcast. They probably have a low-level job at a production company or an agency or something. Maybe you can just give a couple of tips. Mm-hmm. How do you politely, do that job, but also tell people that, hey, I'm also a writer, I'm also a director. Would you look at my short film? Would you read my script? Was that a part of your strategy, or did it just happen organically? Maybe you have a couple of suggestions for people that are in that situation of how, to be polite and respectful, but still push yourself forward.
Yeah, I think the best advice is to use what is around you, and I didn't push, because at that point I was still learning, and because I was at the movie channels, obviously there were editing suites, there were edit suites. I knew directors, I knew editors, and the main thing was, and I hope they don't mind me saying this, that overnight those edit suites were standing empty, and obviously because they knew us, they would allow us to go in there and just cut the little short films and cut our own work. And really, I was just using what was around me, and I think that's the best advice. I'm still kind of doing that. I'm using the contacts I have around me, using the equipment that I can hire from people, obviously from your contacts, because as you know, most of it is who you know. But if you are working in a production company somewhere that is making films or making productions, doesn't have to be fictional, it can be factual, anything. You have got access to filmmakers, to storytellers, and you have to use that. That is your ultimate film school for me. And so that's all I did. I just used what was around me, learned from what was around me, and in the end, the only way to do it is to do it. It's never been easier to make a film, because you can make a film on your phone, you can edit it on your laptop. You can be self-sufficient. I don't need to borrow a professional edit suite anymore, because I've got the editing equipment on my laptop. So it's all about just going out and making it, and then what reaction you get, because you are making it to learn your craft, but you then obviously, I would like to think, want people to see that, because you're making that as an entertainment for an audience. And then you, as I did, you show somebody, and if they like it, you keep going, or you amend. You're constantly learning from that point of view. But the only way really to learn is to get out there and just make stuff.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So just real quick on Small Time Obsession, how were you able to raise the money for that? Did you go find investors, or was it basically self-funded?
Self-funded. My attitude was, nobody knows me. I've never made anything before. Who's going to invest in me? It's not going to happen. So at every level, it was a case of, okay, who's going to write? I wanted to be a director. There was no question. After doing the short films, the directing was what sort of turned me on the most, and that's what I was happiest with. So, but when it came to the writing, it was much more, no one's going to write this for me, so I will write it for myself. I will write something for myself to direct, and obviously then I have control over the locations, the budget, everything, because you just again look at what you have and weave a story with the locations and with the stories and the experiences that you know. So it was totally self-funded. You know, it was funded through myself, family and friends, people who knew me, and in the end, they invested in me. Not so much invested in the story, because obviously they don't know how it was going to turn out. But they invested in me, and I suppose the passion I had for the project, and wanted to support me. And obviously, what you do is you try and convince even those people that you're serious, and that you've got a good idea, and that you have ambition for it. And so even from that point, even though these are people that know you, you are still selling your project as you would to any other investor. You know, with Last Witness, these were now investors who didn't know me. So you stepped up to the next level of trying to sell your project to people who don't know you, and now you are on much more of a professional level. So I'm not saying that Small Time Obsession was an amateur production, not at all, but from a funding and producing point of view, it was very much a homegrown, self-financed project.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's dig into The Last Witness. Maybe to start out, you can just give us a quick pitch or logline. What is this film all about?
Well, this is a young journalist. This is set in 1947 in England, and it is about a young journalist who is ambitious, who wants to succeed, and he's probably one of the first wave of investigative journalists, if you like, because that's a relatively new idea. Before, journalists were kind of told what to write, and they had bosses who told them. Whereas he's much more of a rebel, a free thinker, and he has ambition. He wants to write that big story. As in all our sort of classic political thrillers, he comes across something that doesn't look right, and as a result, he comes across the Katyn massacre, and then the subsequent cover-up of that massacre by the British and the American governments.
And where did this idea come from? How did you get involved with this story?
Paul Shambosky, my co-writer, wrote a play called Katyn Witness, and I saw that play in 1995. He then saw my film Small Time Obsession when it came out in the cinema, and he wrote to me and he said, you know what, if you're thinking about making another film, I think Katyn Witness would make a good film. At that point, his play was set in one room, pretty much in one room. So I wasn't sure, but I thought about it, and I thought, actually, no, if I can open this up and make this more, a more cinematic idea, then it works on many levels. As I say, because it was a personal project, because my grandfather was actually executed in the Katyn massacre, it dealt with my own family's history as well after the war. It was an interesting story because it was a murder mystery, ultimately. And I just thought it was something different. And you're always looking as a screenwriter, obviously, for something that isn't out there, something that your unique selling point. And I thought it had a unique selling point, even though it was quite a difficult ask, because I wasn't starting, as I was saying, from a blank page. I was actually working with already the structure of his play, and the fact that I had the limitations of historical fact as well. So those two things made it actually quite difficult, because I had to weave the story in amongst all the stuff that was already there. So that wasn't a straightforward kind of script. The other scripts I was writing were just blank page. Start with an idea and make it up as you go.
So did you option, like what did that relationship between you and Paul look like? Did you option the play and then went and wrote a script based on his play, or was he involved in the actual writing of the script?
It worked really well with us because, yes, I optioned the play. So once I said, yeah, Paul, I think this is a good idea, I think we'll do this, he agreed, and then I optioned the play, and he had already written a screenplay, but he hadn't written it in screenplay format. So the first thing I did straight away was just rewrite his screenplay in screenplay format, just to see where it all lands. How long it is, what kind of works, what doesn't work, and so on. So that was the first idea, and then from then on, it worked in that because he's a playwright. A lot of it was very dialogue-led, and being a director, filmmaker, I was very sort of much visual led. Mm-hmm. The dialogue to me is, as the books tell you, the least important or the last thing you think about. Whereas with Paul, most of the story was told through the dialogue. But he had done all the research on on the history. He likes doing the research. He's good with dialogue. So that's what he dealt with, and then I would, in a way, edit everything that he would give me, and also work on the structure of opening the whole thing out from that one room into what I thought was a more cinematic story and a story that would move and turn it into that structure of a movie and take it away from the structure of a play.
Yeah, so so you're working on this with Paul, you're turning it into a polished script. Maybe let's talk about your development process a little bit. First off, how do you know when the script is at a point where you need to get some outside people giving you notes?
There was a turning point. I worked with Paul. I don't know how many drafts we did, maybe 3 or 4 drafts, and then I thought, as you rightly say, okay, I need someone to read this. I need a reader to read this. I need to, get some kind of outside input, because you get too close to it, and in the end, not that you say you don't know if it's working or not, but you don't know if it's working or not. You need someone to say, yeah, it's fine, it's kind of working, move on. And so there was a script writing course, I think it was, but it was almost like a competition, and you would put your script into this competition, and if it won, then you would be placed with a producer who was also wanting to work with a writer on the opposite side, and you would be given sessions with a professional script reader who would then look at your script and then give notes. And then obviously that would help you to move forward, and that's what happened. I kind of won that competition, was placed with the producer, and we had sessions with a script reader, and what came out of that was that the script and the screenplay and the movie itself stopped being a drama, and it actually at that point it turned into a thriller. That was the turning point, I think, when it stopped being a drama and became a thriller and became a murder mystery. Mm-hmm. That was the important moment for me, and that's what that did. The outside input, that's what that did.
Now, sort of moving this screenplay from a drama to a thriller, was that purely just a creative choice? You felt it made the material stronger, or was there some outside input saying, well, a thriller will be an easier film for us to sell? What were those reasonings for trying to make it more of a mystery thriller?
Combination of everything. I mean, I love thrillers. I've always come from thrillers. That's the sort of films I enjoy watching. And Small Time Obsession was a drama, and yes, dramas are the hardest things to sell. We know that the thriller is the most popular genre. I think it still is, and and it's also a more the subject matter itself. When you think about it, it's quite heavy. And I was very worried, as I said before, when you're thinking about an audience, thinking, I'm trying to sell a very heavy historical drama. That felt less attractive to me than saying this is a murder mystery with this backdrop of the Katyn massacre. And so it stops being a film about the massacre of 22,000 Polish officers and starts being a murder mystery about this guy who we don't know who he is, but the backdrop of that is this historical event that was actually true. And so it just felt, for me, like something like a film I would want to see. Now, not the first script, in a way, I was trying to make something that worked, but it still didn't feel like the sort of film I'd want to go to the cinema and see. The decision was to how do I bring an audience to this subject? And I thought by doing it as a thriller, that would be more successful.
Yeah, I'm curious too. You mentioned that as you started writing this script, you had two other projects that were more of just an idea that you were writing on. Is there a reason that this one made it into production first? Did you put all your eggs in this one basket for The Last Witness and really push hard on that one and set the other two projects aside, or have you been working on all three of the projects and this is just for whatever reason the project that got produced first?
It was all three are very different. One is a kind of is a contemporary thriller with a female lead. The other one is a horror film set in Roman Britain, and this was The Last Witness. And all that happened, I was working in parallel on all of them. What happened was ultimately when I was pitching to producers and so on, Last Witness kept coming up as being the most interesting to them. So it was actually, funnily enough, the hardest one to write, but it was the one that everybody was most interested in. Because, I suppose, for all those reasons, because it did have a USP and it was slightly different to the norm.
Yeah. Okay, so now you have a solid script that you're happy about. What were those next steps of actually raising the money and getting into production? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that process.
Then once the script was what I thought was ready, and obviously that just comes from feedback as well. It got to a producer. It got to Carol Harding, the producer of The Last Witness. She worked in television drama as well. I'd worked with her as a director in television drama, so we knew each other as well. And she's very good on script. And once she said, okay, this is a script we can now take to funders and investors, that was good enough for me. And that's where she took over. And I think the first time she took the script to investors was when she went to the Berlin Film Festival at about in 2011, I think it was, something like that. And that's where it started. We got interest from Poland, which was interesting to me because I wasn't sure if Poland would actually be interested in the film. Funnily enough, because I made it in English, I was trying to pitch the film as a film for audiences that knew absolutely nothing about the Katyn massacre. That it was a political thriller in the style of the 70s political thrillers like 3 Days of the Condor. Things that something happens and then they uncover this conspiracy. In this case, it just happened to be that it was true and it was the Katyn massacre in this case. But it could have been any conspiracy. That's how I looked at it. But Poland was very interested in it because again they didn't know the story from the English point of view. They actually didn't know the story of The Last Witness or weren't aware of it. So that was very interesting. And once the Polish co-producer got involved, we tried to go for Polish money. In the end, we got Polish distribution involved, and the rest was from film-making contacts that Carol had. So American and British investors. But again, most of the people were people that we knew, but they were film investors rather than going down the crowdfunding route or the private or the kind of private equity route.
Yeah. At any point were you bringing on some cast? Like when she showed up in 2011 at the Berlin market, did she have some cast attached to the project, or at that point it was just you as a director and here's the script?
Before Carol had come on board, I was producing it myself for a while. I was finding locations because I was writing it, and obviously for myself to direct, and because I'd already produced Small Time Obsession, I knew kind of what I could do beforehand, and I was looking for locations to obviously help me with the script to see what was possible, what wasn't possible. I always had one eye on production, if you like. So I had already spoken to a few actors. I had already attached a few actors to the film, but because it took time, and obviously as you go to investors will say, well, they maybe not big enough for us, or it's moved on. We need actors that are more current or more relevant, and that was a process that continued all the way through, almost till when we started shooting.
I see. Perfect. So how can people see The Last Witness? Do you know what the release schedule is going to be like?
The worldwide theatrical release sort of starts in Poland on the 11th of May, so that's this time next week. It will be on general release nationwide in Poland, so that's the first time it will be in a cinema. And then on the 29th of May, it's released in the US on VOD and digital HD.
Okay, perfect. And I just like to round up round out the interviews by asking the guests how people can keep up with what you're doing. Anything you're comfortable sharing, a Twitter handle, Facebook page, blog, anything that you use, I can put in the show notes.
Now there are, but I can't find my Twitter address.
Oh, okay. No worries.
But yes, absolutely. I'm on Twitter, and that's probably the best place to go for information on the film.
And I'll be able to track that down. So I'll put that in the show notes, and people can click over to it. So, well, Peter, I really appreciate your time talking with me today, and good luck with this film.
Thank you very much, and thanks so much for talking to me. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
I just want to talk quickly about SYS Select. It's a service for screenwriters to help them sell their screenplays and get writing assignments. The first part of the service is the SYS Select Screenplay Database. Screenwriters upload their screenplays along with a logline, synopsis, and other pertinent information like budget and genre, and then producers search for and hopefully find screenplays that they want to produce. Dozens of producers are in the system looking for screenplays right now. I launched this service at the beginning of this year, and we've already started to see some success stories. You can check out SYS podcast episode 222 with Steve Deering. He was the first official success story to come out of the SYS Select database. You can learn more about all of this by going to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. When you join SYS Select, you get access to the screenplay database that I just mentioned, along with all the other services that we're providing to SYS Select members. Those services include the monthly newsletter that goes out to our list of 400 producers who are actively seeking writers and screenplays. Each SYS Select member can pitch one screenplay in this monthly newsletter. We also have partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads sites, so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, we've been getting 5 to 10 high-quality paid leads per week. These leads run the gamut. There's producers looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their ideas or properties. They're looking for shorts, they're looking for features, TV and web series pilots, all types of different projects. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. Also, you can get access to the SYS Select forum, where we will help you with your logline and query letter and answer any screenwriting related questions that you might have. Also in the forum are all the recorded screenwriting classes that I've done over the years, so you'll have access to all of those as well. The classes cover every part of the writing process, from concept to outlining to the first act, second act, third act, as well as other topics like writing short films and pitching your projects in person. Once again, if this sounds like something you would like to learn more about, please go to sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. In the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing writer-director Devin Cameron. He just did a film called Kid Brother. He is a filmmaker who lives in the Midwest and is building his career from there. So we talked through how he was able to get his latest film produced, as well as how he's been able to forge a career living far away from Hollywood. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Peter. Lots of great information in this interview. I especially liked the story he told about how he was working at a TV station and became friends with some other like-minded young people, and they just started doing their own projects on the side in their spare time. So many success stories, especially success stories that we talk about here on the podcast, they all start with someone taking the initiative, not just sitting around waiting for someone to give them permission to go do something, but actually just taking the initiative and going out and doing something on their own in their spare time. As I said, so many success stories seem to start that way. We didn't talk a lot about it in the interview, but Peter has spent his career directing a ton of television. Go and look him up on IMDb. He's just got tons and tons of directing credits for different television shows. This is obviously a great way to get paid to work on one's craft. I mean, that's all those years on set working as a TV director are preparing him for these opportunities as a feature film director. Then when he's working on these projects and he goes in there, obviously no one is going to question his experience as a director because he's just got so much. It actually adds something to the project. It actually adds something to the package when he has this script and as he's trying to push it forward. So really keep that in mind. I think there are probably lots of other ways that you could use your own skill set to get into the industry, at least in some capacity. Obviously, being a director and a writer on a TV show, those are real premium jobs. Sometimes it takes a while to get to those points, but there's a lot of people that are listening to this podcast that do have skill set, maybe legal skills, maybe accounting skills, bookkeeping skills, managerial skills, administrative skills. All of these types of skills can be used in a environment that's a production company, just as you're using them in whatever kind of company that you're working at now. And again, just being in proximity of a production company, seeing how projects come to life in that context will really help you as a writer. I'm talking about this often on the podcast. I did a whole list about maybe episode 75 of the podcast. I just went through and kind of charted how the screenwriters that I had on the podcast, how they had found success. And so many of them, the vast majority of them, they found success by working in the industry. And I think Peter is another great example of sort of living proof of that. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.